Welcome back to New Rockstars. It's me, MT, and Batman Unburied is one of the dopest narrative podcasts on Spotify right now. And this video is sponsored by Spotify, so we can break down the super crazy and disturbing episode 2 of this addicting listen of a superhero show on Spotify. So let's go ahead and dive into it, my beautiful nerd babies. We start off the episode with Winston Duke Bruce Wayne having a sit down with his psychotherapist Dr. Hunter, played by John Rhys-Davies, who tries to get into his mind while Bruce Wayne, being the guarded man that he is, just straight up outright resists and refuses, very much reflecting just how well mentally trained the psyche of this version of Bruce Wayne is against outside influences, as the Batman in the comics is, of course, famous for his ability to resist all types of interrogation techniques and even psychic mental manipulations. And I thought it was a nice touch for Dr. Hunter to open up the episode with,
"I'm going to turn the lights on now."
As thematically, we all know that Bruce Wayne is a creature of the dark who shuns the light. So having this Dr. Hunter start off by opening the lights symbolizes that Bruce Wayne is about to be put into an uncomfortable situation with Dr. Hunter's therapeutic interrogation that sought to shine a light on his subconscious, something that Bruce would directly tell Hunter not to do a little bit later on. And I also thought that one of Dr. Hunter's first questions that he asked Bruce is really quite intriguing here.
Let's talk about fear. Before this incident, when was the last time you remember being afraid?
Maybe, I don't know, a few years ago?
You haven't felt true fear in years?
Unless you count nightmares.
Which is yet another accurate characterization of Bruce Wayne, his extremely concerning inability to fear and face danger with a calm mind and body. Which is of course something that was hinted at the very first episode of Batman Unburied, when his father Thomas saw just how unaffected Bruce was about being nearly harvested by the Harvester. Which is, it's kind of just cold-blooded.
Hold up your hand. You are seriously wounded. You just woke up, you're ripped to the gills on payment, and you're angry with me, and look at that. Your hand's as steady as a goddamn rock. Last night, a serial murderer attacked you in the morgue, and I bet your heart rate barely went above resting.
But Bruce does feel fear during nightmares though, and we definitely have gotten a hint at those lingering nightmares as they have started to bleed into reality through Batman Unburied's amazing sound design. With of course that weird bat moment at the end of the episode where Bruce is hearing these bat sounds that Kel can't hear, sort of signaling those nightmares bleeding into reality.
Bruce, are you okay?
That.
What?
The bats.
What bats? Bruce, are you okay?
You don't hear that?
What's wrong with you? Bruce, please!
And when Hunter says,
Perhaps he feels a kinship with you. Some might call you a methodical, obsessive man.
it felt so much in line with Matt Reeves' new Batman universe on the big screen, with the Riddler becoming obsessed with Batman's obsessive love of vengeance. However, when Hunter said,
"You are very protective about what's inside your mind, aren't you?"
There's nothing in there that would interest you, trust me.
Oh, I disagree.
it made my ears perk up, because just the way that Hunter says, "Oh, I disagree," makes me feel like he could potentially have a sketchy MO for himself, possibly an attempt to get some sneaky family intel on the Waynes for his own purposes. Who knows? But I feel like he wants a little bit more here. And I also found it interesting how Dr. Hunter mentions that Bruce Wayne is not a detective and he's supposed to be this doctor. And I'm just like, I don't think you've read a Batman comic, my friend, because Bruce Wayne is the world's greatest detective. And as the scene transitions, we get the sweet sounds of Black Canary's Ashes on Sunday band, which is mentioned by the Gotham radio DJ.
Here's Ashes on Sunday with their #1 hit.
In Gotham's Park Row also gets a reference in this episode when Bruce is recalling the tragedy of Elliot Bonham, one of the 5 Harvester victims who had their organs sent to Bruce Wayne's house.
This Vic's name is Elliot Bonham. Lives on Park Row with his 2 kids.
Park Row, or more popularly known as Crime Alley, is of course the location of Thomas and Martha Wayne's deaths in the DC Comics, but apparently not in this universe, because they're still walking around talking to their son, who they love very much. And when Thomas Wayne talks about amygdalotomies, he's actually referring to the surgical removal of the amygdala from the human brain, which is apparently something that some doctors have done in the past as a last resort for patients who struggle with overly violent outbursts or, just general hyperexcitability. But one of the biggest side effects of this type of procedure is that people who have undergone it usually have some trouble with facial recognition afterwards, as there are special cells within within the amygdala that aid with helping your brain recognize the people that you know, as well as what their facial expressions even mean when they do stuff like smile, frown, or, express disgust and whatnot. So I'm interested to see if at all, this could potentially factor into this audio drama series. But also another negative thing about amygdalotomies is that a lot of patients actually become more violent and sometimes even develop schizophrenia, with some people even describing a life without an amygdala as a life of hell. So needless to say, it's actually a super controversial procedure, as, a lot of people just need their amygdalas, because amygdalas are great. Having feelings are great. But, as Bruce points out, the Harvester seems to only be removing the amygdala from his victims after he's tortured them and had their organs removed, which Bruce notes is the killer's way of potentially removing fear from the bodies of his victims, which is a really interesting thing, considering his whole Jesus Christ theme that he's trying to go for from last episode. And when the father and son pair discover a piece of foreign black substance within one of the Harvester's victims, Bruce notes that what he found was a piece of obsidian, a black piece of super sharp volcanic glass that surgeons have used for centuries, even to this day, specifically because of obsidian's ability to cut objects and skin significantly more efficiently than steel scalpels can. And obsidian scalpels can even cause skin scarring after surgery to be minimal, and for the overall healing of the skin to be just way faster after surgery. It's just a lot more efficient of a scalpel. But speaking of the skin, a really intriguing moment between Thomas and Bruce happens when Bruce touches his father's hand.
Your hand. Let me see it. Have you had your circulation checked? Your hands are freezing.
I'm afraid I'm not as used to being down in this dungeon as you are.
Thomas's reaction is quite interesting to me, considering how historically in the comics, Thomas and Martha Wayne are, of course, dead. So, usually their skin would be cold during this adult Bruce Wayne stage of his life, because, that's just how dead people's skins are when they've been dead for about, 18 to 20 years. Usually you don't have skin at that point. Anyway, and considering how Bruce's reaction to his mother dropping her pearl necklace last episode, accompanied by the sounds of all these screeching bats, I don't know, it's starting to feel to me that this Bruce Wayne might be haunted by the spirits of his dead parents while he is trying to solve this case, possibly even hallucinating them whenever he feels like he needs them the most, like how his father just helped him with the surprise autopsy that he had to do on his spare time. But another interesting thing to mention here is that during Bruce Wayne's phone call with Kel to help him into that medical building at Gotham University, Kel mentions that the building closes at 6 p.m. on Sundays, which is interesting considering how that radio host earlier on in the episode was playing that Black Canary band, Ashes on Sunday. And since Bruce Wayne is dealing with a lot of dead people on a Sunday afternoon, it sort of makes that Ashes on Sunday reference a really nice thematic piece of foreshadowing for this episode.
I'm standing outside the medical building at Gotham U right now, and it's locked. I really need to get inside.
Oh, yeah, they lock the whole place up at 6 on Sundays.
And when Kel finally arrives, we learn that both Thomas Wayne and Kel's own father both attended Gotham State University, and that Kel's father was actually a chemist, which feels very much in line with another famous face from Gotham University in the comics, that of Jonathan Crane, also known as the Scarecrow, who actually first becomes imprisoned in Arkham Asylum after murdering the people who were responsible for getting him fired from his job at Gotham University for the minor offense of firing your gun in class to induce fear. I mean, why would you fire somebody because of that? But that was mostly because Crane loved to do a lot of weird experimentations with fear on campus, even developing the prototype for what would eventually become his famous fear toxin on this very campus. So it would be interesting to learn if either of their fathers have any connection to the villain Scarecrow in their past as these episodes continue. And when Bruce and Kel head up to the parking garage to meet up with this mysterious Cornelius Stirk figure that security man Tony points them to, they discover an audio recording of the Harvester feasting on the organs of his victims after begging someone to find him only after he is complete. And this sort of sounds suspiciously like the MO of one Cornelius Stirk from the DC Comics, who would feast on the flesh of his victims, but only after their bodies filled them up with the tasty fear chemicals that he thought would sustain them like some type of murder Gatorade. But needless to say, this episode was insane, and I loved every second of it, and I cannot wait to listen to more. So you go on over to Spotify right now and listen to the Batman Unburied podcast. It is amazing, and they got a couple episodes right now, and you will have a good time on your drive to work. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. You can follow me at MasterTainment on Twitter, but you could also follow New Rockstars wherever we are on social media. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you get notifications every time we upload a video. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.